I'm Thomas Caldwell, 62. Widowed. The kind of age where people assume you want peace more than anything. One small, paid-off house on the edge of Phoenix, a dog that's gone gray around the muzzle, and a quiet routine that doesn't ask much from you. But December has a way of asking anyway. My wife Linda passed 3 years ago, right around Christmas. She was the kind of woman who always left one extra red stocking hanging by the fireplace, just in case someone shows up. After she was gone, I kept that stocking up. Not because I expected company, more because taking it down felt like admitting there would never be surprises again. I have one child. My son Ryan, 35, gentle, hard-working, the kind of man who wants to do right by everyone, and doesn't always notice when everyone doesn't include him. Ryan married Melissa 2 years ago. Melissa is pretty in a polished way, speaks like she's always choosing the cleanest word, the safest tone. Her parents, the Whitmores, are the kind of people who walk into a room and the room straightens up. Backs a little straighter, voices a little softer, laughter a little more careful. Earlier in November 2025, Ryan called me with that bright sound in his voice I hadn't heard since he was a boy. "Dad," he said, "this is our first Christmas season with the shop. It's finally happening." The shop was in Scottsdale. Home goods, seasonal gifts, the kind of place that smells like cinnamon candles and pine-scented soap in December. Ryan had dreamed about owning something that was his, something he built, not just another job for someone else. I should tell you something about me. I'm not rich. I spent my life as an electrician. I did well enough to retire without fear, but I don't have money to waste. What I did have, besides my pension and a small savings Linda and I scraped together, was a paid-off house and a clean credit history. Ryan didn't ask me for cash outright. He asked me to help with the paperwork. He wanted me to co-sign a small business loan and a line of credit so they could stock up for Christmas. He said it would only be for a few months. "Once Christmas is over, we'll pay it down," he promised. "We just need inventory now." I hesitated. Linda used to say, "Helping your child is right, but don't teach them to live off your sacrifice." And still, I signed, because it was Christmas, because grief makes you softer around the edges, because I wanted to feel useful instead of lonely. December rolled in, and the shop looked beautiful. Wreaths on the door, white lights in the window, red ribbon on the shelves. I went over a few times to help, fixed an outlet, replaced a flickering light, built a little display stand in the back. One afternoon, I was in the storage room with my tools when I heard Melissa talking to Ryan at the counter. Her voice was low but sharp, like a blade kept just under the table. "You need to make your dad understand," she said. "We're building our life. Not that kind of family where everything turns into money talk." I stood there with a pair of pliers in my hand, staring at a stack of boxes like I could make the words disappear by not moving. It wasn't just the money talk. It was the way she said it, like it was dirty. I told myself I must have misunderstood. I'm older, I'm sensitive. I didn't want to become one of those fathers who ruins every holiday by making it a thing. But small moments started piling up. They always do. Ryan invited me to dinner one night. Melissa smiled, but as soon as I sat down, she said, "Dad, could you keep your voice a little low? My dad gets headaches." So I did. I made myself smaller. I took up less space in my own family, and anytime I asked about the shop, how sales were going, what their rent looked like, what their plan was for paying down the loan, Melissa would glance at the time and pivot the conversation to how her parents decorated their house this year, or where they ordered their Christmas centerpiece. It felt like she was gently training me, like a dog. Don't bark about money. Don't scratch at the door. Don't ask to sit at the table. Then, on December 18th, Ryan called me and I could hear something tight in his breathing. "Dad, the landlord sent a new lease," he said. "They say we have to sign by the 22nd. "A new lease?" I asked. "You already signed when you opened." He swallowed. "They said the market changed." "Bring it over," I said. "Let me read it." There was a pause. Then Ryan's voice got fast, like he wanted to sprint past the discomfort. "Melissa says you don't need to worry. She says you don't have to make it tense." That word, tense. Like asking to understand a contract was a personality flaw. That night, Ryan came over alone. No Melissa, no polite smile. He put a thick packet of papers on my kitchen table and said, "Just look quick, Dad. Then we can sign and be done." I'm not a lawyer, but I've wired enough buildings in my life to know when something is rigged. The lease had a market adjustment factor every 6 months with no cap, a minimum revenue clause. If their sales dropped below a certain number, they owed penalties. And then the line that made my stomach go cold. Personal guarantor assumes full responsibility for all obligations. The personal guarantor was me. I stared at Ryan. "Why is my name on this?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. They wanted extra reassurance. "Ryan," I said slowly, "do you understand what this means? If the shop struggles, they can come after me. They can come after my house." Ryan shook his head like he could shake the meaning loose. "Dad, nobody would do that. They're good people." I tapped the paper with my finger. "Paper doesn't have good people. It has terms, and these terms are a trap." Ryan's face flushed. He stood up and paced like a cornered animal. "You always think people are out to get us," he snapped. "You always make everything heavy." I didn't yell back. I didn't even feel anger yet. Mostly I felt something sad and quiet, because that voice, that "you always," didn't sound like my son. It sounded like something he'd been taught to repeat. "I'm not signing," I said. Ryan froze. Then the panic spilled out. "So you're going to ruin my Christmas? You're going to wreck everything we worked for?" "No," I told him. "I'm trying to stop you from losing everything." He grabbed the packet, shoved it into his bag, and headed for the door. And right before he left, he said the sentence that still stings when I replay it. "Dad, don't come to Christmas this year. Melissa says you make the atmosphere tense." The door shut behind him. I stood in my kitchen listening to the clock tick and the heater kick on and off. Linda's extra stocking hung by the fireplace, swaying just a little in the warm air. I wanted to believe this was just stress, holiday stress, new business stress, that it would blow over. But the next day proved it wasn't about stress. It was about control. On December 19th, I drove to the shop without calling. It was busy. Christmas music playing soft. People buying gifts. Ryan was wrapping packages at the counter. Melissa stood up front, her hair perfect, her sweater crisp. When she saw me, her smile flickered like a light bulb trying to hold on. "Hi, Dad," she said. Polite. Cold. "I need to talk to Ryan about the lease," I said. Melissa's smile tightened. "He can handle it. Are you here to buy something? We're running a sale." I looked at Ryan. He glanced at me for 1 second, then dropped his eyes and kept rapping like if he didn't see me, he didn't have to choose. When it slowed down, Ryan disappeared into the back. I followed. In the storage room, I lowered my voice. Ryan, that lease isn't normal. You need a lawyer to look at it. He rubbed his forehead. Melissa says you overthink. And her parents. They have business experience. They said it was fine. My chest tightened. Her parents already reviewed it? He nodded. Mr. Whitmore has a friend in real estate. He said it's standard. What's the friend's name? I asked, already feeling the answer come like a bad smell. Ryan hesitated. Gavin Pierce. I felt my pulse spike. Gavin, the helpful guy Ryan had mentioned a few times. The one who found their location, negotiated with the landlord, helped with paperwork. Ryan, I asked carefully, is Gavin representing you, or is he representing the landlord? Ryan's shoulders rose defensively. He's helping us. Are you sure? I pressed. Ryan's eyes flashed. Dad, stop. The storage room door opened and Melissa stepped in. She saw the lease pages in my hand and her expression hardened. You're doing this again? She asked. I'm trying to keep Ryan from getting trapped, I said. Melissa let out a light laugh that didn't reach her eyes. You talk like my husband is stupid. I'm saying the terms are dangerous, I replied. Melissa folded her arms. Dad, it's Christmas. People want joy. They want light. You always bring the energy down. There it was again. Not you're wrong, but you're ruining the vibe. A neat little way to turn truth into a social offense. I'm not signing, I said, and Ryan shouldn't either. Melissa looked at Ryan and then said softly, cruelly, See? He always embarrasses you. Ryan didn't defend me. He didn't defend himself. I went home with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. That night, I couldn't sleep. I dug out a copy of their original lease from when they first opened. Back then, there was no endless rent escalation, no minimum revenue penalty, and my name wasn't anywhere on it. So why now? I called an old friend, Marty, who worked as an accountant. I hated bringing anyone into family business, but I hated the idea of my son getting pulled under even more. Marty listened quietly. Then he sighed. Tom, he said, this kind of lease is a squeeze. They want someone with assets on the hook. If the business dips, the landlord doesn't suffer. You do. My throat went dry. Ryan thinks they're trustworthy. People trust what makes them feel safe, Marty said, and they trust what keeps them from being ashamed. That hit hard, because I could picture it. Ryan trying to prove he belonged in Melissa's world, trying not to look small in front of the Whitmores. And then, on December 20th, the email came. It was from my bank, regarding the line of credit I had co-signed. Please update financial information. Changes requested involving personal guarantee. Something cold slid down my spine. I called the bank. The manager spoke politely, like she was walking around a problem. Mr. Caldwell, she said, we received a request to increase the limit and extend the term. There was also a proposal to secure the line with collateral, your home. I sat up so fast my chair scraped the floor. I did not request that, I said. There was a pause. The submission includes an electronic signature from your email, sir. My stomach turned. I asked for copies of everything. When the documents arrived, I stared at the e-signature. It looked like mine at first glance. But there was something off, like someone had practiced my handwriting, but never lived in my body. I called Ryan. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. Then I called Melissa. She picked up right away, bright as always. Hi, Dad. Who used my email to submit paperwork to the bank? I asked. Silence for half a beat. Then, like she was annoyed I'd asked such a rude question. Dad, what are you talking about? You're accusing again. There's a request to use my house as collateral, I said, forcing my voice steady. I didn't do it. Melissa exhaled like I was exhausting her. It's just a formality. We're not taking your house. We needed the bank to feel comfortable. The shop needs inventory. It's Christmas. It's fraud, I said quietly. Someone forged my signature. Her tone cooled. Call it whatever you want, but if you love Ryan, don't make it a big deal. Christmas is here. Again. Christmas as a shield. Christmas as duct tape over illegal behavior. I'm making it a big deal, I said, because it's wrong. Melissa gave a small, soft laugh. Go ahead and see if Ryan still sees you as his father after. Then she hung up. I sat at my table, staring at Linda's extra stocking like it could explain how my life got here. That evening, Ryan came to my house. He walked in like he expected a slap. Dad, he said immediately, Melissa says you called and attacked her. I held up the bank documents. Ryan, someone submitted this using my email. Someone tried to tie my house to your debt. Ryan's face tightened. Melissa wouldn't. Look, I said, and I slid the papers toward him. Ryan read. His color drained. I didn't know, he whispered. I watched him carefully. Who has access to my email? Ryan swallowed. Melissa helped you set up your phone, and Gavin said he could help with paperwork because you're older. Gavin, of course. For the first time, anger rose, slow, heavy, like a storm moving in from far away. They see me as a clueless old man, I said. A signature, a safety net. Ryan sank into the chair and put his face in his hands. And then he did something I hadn't seen him do since childhood. He cried. Dad! He choked out. I was scared. I was scared the shop would fail. I was scared Melissa would look at me like I wasn't enough. I was scared her parents would judge me. I didn't want them to think I was, I don't know, weak. I looked at him and I didn't see a grown man trying to scam his father. I saw a boy trying to keep his place in someone else's world. I put my hand on his shoulder. Ryan, I'm not abandoning you, but I'm not letting you or anyone else drag me into this trap. He lifted his head, eyes raw. What are you going to do? I'm pulling my name off the guarantee. I'm freezing everything. I'm changing every password. And if you want to save the shop, you listen to me. Not Gavin, not the Whitmores. Ryan flinched. Melissa's going to lose her mind. Let her, I said softly. Truth isn't here to make people comfortable. On December 22nd, I met with the bank and my lawyer. We documented the suspected forgery, froze the requests, changed my account security, flagged my credit. My lawyer looked at the lease terms and said something that stuck in my bones. You avoided a disaster, Mr. Caldwell. But the disaster had already happened in another way, inside my family. On December 23rd, Ryan texted me, Dad, Christmas is at Melissa's parents' house. Please don't come. She says you make it tense. I read it over and over. I kept waiting for another line. I'm sorry. I want you there. Anything that sounded like my son. Nothing came. I stared at the old cardboard box on my shelf, the box of Linda's Christmas ornaments, scratched plastic bulbs she'd saved for years like treasures. I had cleaned them carefully, thinking I'd bring them to Ryan's house, thinking we could still keep a piece of Linda alive in their living room. Instead, I set the box back down, gently, like it might break. That night I sat in the dark and decided, if they were going to call me tense for protecting my son, then I would be tense in a way they couldn't ignore. Christmas Eve arrived with a sharp, dry chill. Phoenix doesn't get snow, but it can still feel cold enough to ache. I made coffee, laid everything out on my kitchen table and printed copies. The lease with the escalation clause. The bank email about my home as collateral. Login records showing access from a device I didn't recognize. Marty's notes explaining how these minimum revenue clauses squeeze small businesses. And then the piece that turned my stomach from fear into certainty. Ryan had given me access to his email after he panicked. Buried in his inbox was a message from Gavin Pierce to Mr. Whitmore. Minimum revenue clause is in. Thank you fee as agreed. A thank you fee. So this wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a mistake. It was a deal. Gavin wasn't helping my son. He was selling him, and the Whitmores were standing right there smiling while it happened. That evening, I drove to the Whitmores' house. Their place looked like a magazine cover. White lights perfectly wrapped, wreaths balanced, classical music floating through a door that probably cost more than my first car. Cars lined the street. They had guests, a full Christmas Eve party. I sat in my car for a moment, hands on the folder in my lap. I remembered last year, being perched on the corner of their sofa like a piece of furniture. I remembered Melissa translating my words into something cleaner and classier. I remembered Ryan's eyes darting to see if I was embarrassing him. Then I took a breath and got out. I didn't bring wine. I didn't bring gifts. I brought evidence. I rang the bell. Melissa opened the door and froze when she saw me. Her eyes flicked. No present. Then down to the folder. "Dad?" she said, like she was surprised I existed. "I came to wish you Merry Christmas," I said. Her jaw tightened. "You weren't invited." "I know," I replied. "Ryan says I make things tense." Melissa's hand moved like she wanted to close the door. I put my foot in the gap. Not aggressively, just enough to keep it from shutting. "There are about a dozen people here," I said calmly. "Right?" Her eyes sharpened. "What do you want?" "I want them to hear the truth," I said, "because I'm pretty sure they've already heard a story about me." Melissa's face drained. "Don't." I stepped inside. The living room went quiet the way a room goes quiet when someone breaks a rule. Mr. Whitmore stood by the Christmas tree holding a drink, mid-story about business. Mrs. Whitmore's smile stiffened. Ryan stood near the kitchen, staring at the floor. When he saw me, his whole body jolted like he'd seen a ghost. Mr. Whitmore set his glass down. His voice was smooth and controlled, like he was speaking to an employee. "Thomas," he said, "I believe Ryan made it clear. Tonight is family." "That's right," I said. "Family. That's why I'm here." He gave a thin smile. "Here to make things tense?" A few people chuckled politely, the way guests laugh to stay safe. I looked around at all the carefully arranged faces. Then I opened my folder. "I'm here because someone tried to attach my home to Ryan's debt," I said, "and someone forged my signature to do it." The room snapped into stillness. Mrs. Whitmore lifted a hand like she could gently push the words back into my mouth. "Oh, goodness. Money talk on Christmas." "It's not money talk," I said. "It's fraud." Mr. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. "What exactly are you accusing?" I pulled out the email from Gavin and held it up. "Gavin Pierce," I said, "sent this to you. Minimum revenue clause is in. Thank you fee as agreed." Mr. Whitmore's face went hard for half a second before he forced it back into composure. Melissa rushed forward, voice sharp. "Dad, stop!" I turned toward her. "You told Ryan I'm tense because I asked about the lease, But you think it's normal for someone to access my email and sign my name? Ryan made a sound, half sob, half gasp. Melissa shot him a glare. Ryan, don't! I didn't raise my voice. That wasn't the point. I spoke slowly, clearly, the way you speak when you want the truth to stay standing. I went to the bank, I said. I froze the request. I pulled my name off the guarantee. I changed every password. I hired a lawyer. A ripple moved through the guests. A few eyes went wide. Someone set their drink down with a small clink that sounded too loud. Mr. Whitmore took a step forward. You're going to destroy their future because you can't handle a little stress? No, I replied. I just prevented you from destroying their future for a thank you fee. Mrs. Whitmore's cheeks flushed. This is outrageous. I pulled out the lease and pointed to the escalation clause. This isn't standard for a small shop. Rent can rise every 6 months with no ceiling. And if sales dip, penalties, the shop will bleed out. And when it does, the personal guarantor gets dragged down with it. I looked straight at Ryan. That guarantor was me. Ryan was crying openly now, not wiping his face, not hiding it, like a dam had finally broken. Dad, he said, voice wrecked. I'm sorry. I was scared. I let it happen. Melissa spun toward him, furious. Ryan, stop performing. Ryan flinched, then something in him changed. He lifted his head like a man waking up. Performing? He choked. We put my dad's house on the line without asking him. Melissa's mouth opened. No words came out. Mr. Whitmore cleared his throat, trying to regain control. Thomas, if you have concerns, we can discuss privately. This is not the place for... I nodded. You're right. It's not the place. But you turned Christmas into a place where I'm supposed to stay quiet, to keep everyone comfortable. Then I let my eyes travel over the guests, over the perfect tree, over the smiling masks that had started to crack. So I chose the place you value most, I said. A room full of witnesses, a room where you can't rewrite the story later. I turned back to Ryan. Tomorrow, you call the lawyer with me. You do not sign that lease. You do not work with Gavin again. You renegotiate terms with a cap, or you find a new location. If that means starting over, you start over. But you don't sell your soul to impress people. Ryan nodded, shaking. Melissa's voice rose, sharp with panic. You can't do this. My parents set everything up. And there it was, the truth hiding in plain sight. I looked at her gently, almost sadly. That's exactly why I'm afraid. I set the folder down on the coffee table right in front of Mr. Whitmore. I didn't come here to beg for a seat at your Christmas table, I said. I came to tell you I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your safety net. And I'm not your victim. Then I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard Ryan's voice crack. Dad! I paused with my hand on the knob. For a moment, I couldn't turn around. I needed the pause so I wouldn't fall apart in front of people who had spent weeks treating my feelings like an inconvenience. Ryan hurried after me, stopping just inside the doorway. His face was wet, his voice small. You're really leaving? He asked. I'm leaving, I said, because I can't sit under a roof where the truth is considered tense. Ryan swallowed hard. I want you at Christmas, Dad. I looked into his eyes, really looked, for the first time in days. Then you have to want me as a father, not as a signature. He nodded again, like each nod was a promise he'd been afraid to make. Then he whispered something that hit me right in the grief. If I choose you, he asked, do I lose Melissa? My throat tightened. I kept my voice soft. If her love only exists when you stay quiet, I said, and when I stay useful, that isn't love, Ryan. That's control. Ryan stood there, shaking, and for the first time in a long time I saw him choosing something real over something shiny. I stepped outside into the cold air and walked to my car. I drove home alone. My house was lit with small Christmas lights I'd put up out of habit more than hope. Inside, Linda's extra stocking still hung by the fireplace. I turned on the heater, sat at my kitchen table, and rested my hand on the old ornament box. I didn't let them take our home, I whispered, like Linda might hear me somewhere. And the strange thing is, I knew I'd just won a battle. But I also knew I'd lost a dream, the dream of a simple Christmas where my family wanted me there because they loved me, not because they needed me. 3 days after Christmas, Ryan showed up at my door with a duffel bag and exhausted eyes. "I'm staying here for a while," he said quietly. "Melissa says I betrayed her." I didn't say, "I told you so." I just stepped aside and let him in. The older I get, the less interested I am in being right, and the more interested I am in being a place someone can land. We sat at my kitchen table. Ryan told me what happened after I left. The party ended early, guests suddenly remembering other commitments. Mr. Whitmore had raged. Melissa had cried, saying I ruined their family's reputation. But Ryan, finally, asked the question that should have been asked from the beginning. "Reputation for what?" he'd said. "For making deals behind my back? For risking my dad's home? For paying a thank you fee to trap me in a lease?" Mr. Whitmore had gone quiet. Not because he was innocent, but because the room had shifted, and he couldn't command it anymore. The next day, Ryan and I went to the lawyer together. We sent a formal notice to the landlord requesting they honor the original lease terms or renegotiate with clear caps and fair clauses. We warned them, in writing, about the forged signature issue and the involvement of a consultant who might be acting unethically. Funny how quickly a landlord becomes flexible when the personal guarantor disappears and legal trouble shows its teeth. Marty helped Ryan look through the shop's finances. Hidden among normal expenses were payments to Gavin labeled as consulting. Not small ones. Gavin had been siphoning money out while smiling in Ryan's face. Gavin stopped answering texts. Then he vanished, like cockroaches do when the kitchen light comes on. The shop didn't die, but Ryan had to cut back and rebuild. He had to work harder, tighter, more honest. He looked tired in a way I hadn't seen before, but there was something else under the exhaustion, a kind of dignity. One night in early January, Ryan sat at my table and stared at Linda's extra stocking. "Dad," he said, voice rough, "I turned you into a tool, a way to avoid being judged." I swallowed the lump in my throat and kept my eyes on my mug. "I did it too," I admitted. "I signed because I was afraid of losing you." Ryan's eyes filled. "I'm sorry." I nodded. I didn't need him to collapse. I needed him to change. After a long moment, he asked, Do you still see me as your son?" I looked at him carefully. "You're my son," I said. "That doesn't disappear. But from now on, our relationship doesn't come with a signature attached. If you want me in your life, you stand with me when people call me tense, just because I won't be used." Ryan nodded, like that sentence settled something inside him. Over the next few weeks, Melissa sent messages about needing space and taking time. Ryan didn't chase, not the way he used to. He didn't beg. He didn't fold himself smaller. I didn't feel joy about their marriage cracking. I don't believe in celebrating heartbreak. But I also knew something. Sometimes the truth breaks things that were already rotten, Toward the end of winter, Ryan hung a small wreath on the shop door. Under it, he taped a simple handwritten note. Family means honesty. No Whitmore branding, no polished slogan. Just the kind of sentence that looks plain until you realize how expensive it is to live it. One evening, Ryan came to my house with a small box in his hands. He set it gently on the table and opened it. Inside were Linda's old ornaments, the scratched plastic bulbs she'd saved like treasure. "I want to hang them with you," he said, barely above a whisper. If that's okay." I picked up one bulb, feeling its scuffs under my thumb. The old Christmas lights reflected in it, warping and shimmering. Not perfect, not new, but real. I hung it on my tree. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like Christmas was a closed door I wasn't allowed to knock on. I felt like it was a small, stubborn light. And my son, finally, was standing beside me, helping me keep it lit. People can call you tense when you refuse to be quiet. They can label you dramatic when you insist on reading the contract. They can say you're ruining the holiday when you won't let someone steal from you with a smile. But I learned something in December 2025. Sometimes being the tense one is just another way of being the only honest person in the room. And I'd rather be unwelcome at a Christmas table than be welcome only as someone's safety net.